Morning and welcome back to the second hour of Sunday Supplement. Really is so much more to talk about this morning, including a huge game at Anfield amid questions over Arne Slot's future and, of course, the crisis at Spurs. With us this morning, Craig Hope, Chief Football Reporter at the Daily Mail, Miguel Delaney, Chief Football Writer at The Independent, and Jack Rosser, Football Reporter for The Sun. Jack, let's start with you, and I'll direct you to the back page of the Sunday Mirror. Chris of Life is the headline. It focuses on Tottenham Hotspur and an interview with their former player, Peter Taylor, who was actually in the Tottenham Hotspur team, relegated from the old First Division way back in 1977. He says Spurs have no hodl and we still went down. Only ugly wins, and Romero being a proper captain will save you. So the soap opera rolls into Anfield this afternoon. It's live, of course, on Super Sunday. Are you surprised, first of all, in the away dugout, Igor Tudor will still be there?
I am. After Tuesday night, we were all, a lot of us with the covering Chelsea, went out to Paris the day before the game, covered Liam Rosenior's press conference, and then went and found somewhere to watch the Tottenham game, and struggling to get it on a telly in Paris. They were already 3-0 down when we finally got it on, and you sat there with a few people that cover clubs in London saying, well, busy day tomorrow, no exploring Paris for you. That sort of, do all of that, taking up your day the next day. It feels like the only reason he is there is that they haven't landed on someone that they want to come in or someone who wants to go in that has said yes to the job. I think if they'd managed to find someone, tie them down, Tudor would have been gone. We've been reading all week that, well, we've been reading already in the first couple of matches that he was in that the players weren't quite sure, and then after what happened at Atletico Madrid and with Kinski, it sounds like whoever was on the fence has firmly come down on the side that they're not having him as their manager. And I think while you've got these two Champions League games and going to Anfield, they're not games that you target and think we're gonna do it there, that's where the turnaround begins. They've got to go into the Nottingham Forest game next weekend, which is huge, with some sort of sense that they can pull something off, whether that's because they've picked up a result somewhere else and there's a bit of belief coming back, or someone new has come in, stopped having a go at the players relentlessly and lifted spirits even the smallest bit. Whether they can pick up any spirit or just get someone in that can get them to defend, almost like Miguel said with West Ham. If they can get someone to defend, they can draw their way to staying up, which is a mad thing to say about Tottenham, because you can't rely on the creative players. They've had so many injuries, and you certainly can't rely on Christian Romero to start being a proper captain all of a sudden.
Miguel, is there an argument that maybe they've looked at these fixtures and maybe in the background they have got someone in mind, but they've looked at it and thought Atletico Madrid, Liverpool, and then Atletico Madrid, whoever's in charge, are probably not going to get results against those teams anyway. Maybe we wait for that managerial bounce for the big one next weekend. From what I'm told, that's actually not the case. I mean, there's a logic to it, obviously, but I mean, like, in any other circumstance, you could go to Liverpool today thinking you could fancy a result, because Liverpool really poured themselves on Tuesday. With this Spurs, you genuinely can't see them getting a result anywhere. So much is broken. And just from what I was told during the weekend, I wrote it for the Independent, that they've actually had a lot of managers who have made it known that they don't want to take the job for multiple reasons, but one of them being the potential stigma of taking a club like Tottenham down and that being attached to your CV, and also the pressure of the situation. I mean, especially if you go there without kind of any other guarantees about the future, just to suddenly have to go into this, what is chaos at the moment. And as we say, all the noise and everything around about potentially taking such a massive club down, and they've got, I mean, it really is hard to know where they go next.
Yeah. That's what will ramp up the pressure as well, isn't it? That there are clubs that are floating around there. West Ham won't have planned to go down this year, but it's always in the back of their mind that a bad transfer window and that could happen. Forest probably in a similar position. Leeds will have definitely had it as a plan that we're going to be involved in this scrap anyway. Tottenham being down there, no one there is built. As Sam writes in the piece in the Telegraph, this would be a relegation like no other from the Premier League. The amount of change that would have to happen at Tottenham if they drop into the Championship is so hard to fathom. And if they, at some point, drop into that bottom three, the pressure, the psychology, what that's going to do to the stadium and the players' mentality is going to be absolutely incredible.
But so bad has the appointment of Tudor been. What confidence would it give you that they're going to get a third manager of the season right? He's a mood hoover. It's quite incredible that he's come in, and he does. He's sucking Tottenham into the Championship. He really is. He's got the vibe and the aura from the movies, you know, of a Corsican priest brought in to give the last rites to the mafia boss. He's just got that dour demeanour about him. Even his rallying cry on Friday was enough to bring Spurs supporters to tears. This was his big motivational pitch, and yet it's fuelled by put-downs. There's a real negativity in it, and just a bad vibe, basically. And you look at the players on the pitch, I think they need a little bit of love. They're damaged. They're broken. They did not need an Igor Tudor type.
As someone said to me during the week that has knowledge of the Spurs dressing room, there's a lot of scar tissue in there.
Yeah.
From like despite the Europa League last season, and just even like on the Tudor thing as well, it speaks to that Sam's piece goes into a bit. It does speak to just so many wider issues as regards what Spurs are as a club and the hierarchy, how they've been run. I mean, like really, with hindsight, where some Spurs fans would be screaming at us about this, saying it's not hindsight at all. Frank probably should have gone around November because he could see the way things were going.
Yeah.
But again, they wouldn't have known which way to go. There was some logic saying, let's calm down, let's see how it goes. But what did they end up doing? They ended up going for a coaching choice that apparently Paratici, who's now left the club, that he suggested months ago, which speaks to the kind of lack of ideas there.
The Tudor one feels like Paratici's just left the contract in a drawer somewhere when he's left the training ground and somebody's found it and gone, right, yeah, that'll do. We found someone, sack him and bring him in.
Just the one thing on that as well, I would say about Sam's piece, maybe I slightly disagree, is if a lot of it is on Levy to a degree because so much of the club had been built up towards him. And since he went with no transition, suddenly there's this massive vacuum that they're now suffering from.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned, both of you have mentioned Sam Wallace's piece in the Sunday Telegraph. And just to quote from it, he says, in the notes of his remarks to the Fan Advisory Board last week, Chief Executive Vinay Venkatesham suggested he was dealing with a poisoned legacy from Levy. One also suspects Spurs would never be in this position under Levy. He would have recognised his mistake with Thomas Frank and replaced him earlier. The January transfer window would have been used more effectively. There is no chance Tudor would have got the job under Levy. If relegation does come, it is on the new regime.
Yeah, Levy can be both the problem, and there is a legacy issue there, but I think he would also have found the solution. He would have realised far sooner that Frank wasn't working. Now, just on Frank as well, I spoke earlier about being out in the Far East last summer and spent a little bit of time with Thomas. We had a beer, in fact, in a bar in Korea. I think, you know, come the autumn, it was whiskey, which everybody needed. But yeah, sometimes a manager, it's the same trade, but it's a different job within that trade. And Thomas Frank, I think it was clear really early on that the same with Graham Potter making the jump from Brighton to Chelsea, that Thomas wasn't really a Spurs manager. For all of there is a charisma about him, there is a personality there. I think it's a different beast to manage a club like Tottenham. It wasn't Thomas Frank, it's not Igor Tudor. Where do they go from here? We touched on it earlier, the scar tissue. I think they need a little bit of love. Why not go back to a Ryan Mason with Glenn Hoddle above them? It's a broken football club on and off the pitch. I think what they need is a little bit of feel-good during the remaining 8-9 matches.
The problem as well is you look at, and it's noted in Sam's piece and a few others, the quotes from the new leadership this week when speaking to the fans, and the finger-pointing that's going on already. They're not even... The season's not finished. They're still fighting to stay up, and there's a massive blame game going on, which is a huge problem. You speak to people inside clubs that are pulling together. West Ham is the example now that everyone's looking at, and they're the ones that are going to stay up. Around West Ham, when the pressure was really on Nuno, they lost at Wolves, and everyone thought, that's it, he's going to go. They're going to have to change again. They've already got rid of Graham Potter. Nuno's going to go. There was, and people at the time thought it might have been, they're just putting the blinkers on and head in the sand. We're supporting him. We're going to give him some money in January. We don't want to go through this many managers in a season. We're not going to do a Forest or maybe now a Tottenham. And it's worked. It's pulled off. They all pulled together. There wasn't that much finger-pointing going on. Spurs, everyone's looking to chuck somebody else under the bus at the moment.
You mentioned the finger-pointing. Last season, it was Ange Postecoglou for the 17th place finish, but he redeemed himself with that Europa League win. This season, it's Thomas Frank. It's Igor Tudor. It's always at the coaching staff. Now we're seeing pieces from, like... In his notes, Vinay Venkatesham blaming, maybe in part, Daniel Levy. What about the players? Are they getting away with it a little bit here?
Definitely. the leaders in that group have had their fair share of criticism. Romero and more latterly Van der Ven for some of the decisions they've made. They're obviously also struggling with having an 11 of injured players out that is streets ahead of the 11 players they've got left behind. The chance the squad have got to redeem themselves is going to places like Anfield, where Miguel said it's not an impossible place to go this season. I think Burnley drew there, Forest won there. You can go, make a statement and put in a performance that shows you still care, you are still fighting for this. But you look at some of their games recently, Palace, where they fell to pieces, Fulham, they didn't have anyone sent off, but whenever they crossed the halfway line, they almost stopped. They weren't trying to cause problems for Fulham. They don't know where to go or what to do. The ones coming back have got a chance to come in, and coming back from injury, you could, if you're being selfish, which it looks like quite a few of them are at this stage, because a lot of them will be thinking, I'm out of here in the summer.
Yeah.
Come in and make a name for yourself and save them. That's where the players get the chance to answer any criticism.
It is astonishing, though. As you're talking there about kind of, the players and the level and make a name for yourself. Well, obviously, because of the English results this week in Europe, there's been a lot of talk about the Premier League in its wealth. And it's incredible because I was going through it, obviously, and that list in the Deloitte Football Money League, and there are Spurs in 9th. And I know Sam touches on this in his piece. For this to go down, like the amount of waste it would represent at all levels of the club is staggering.
Craig, there is another team in this game, actually, and it's a big game for Liverpool as well. We're saying all this scrutiny is on Igor Tudor, but there is a little bit of scrutiny on Arne Slot as well, as there has been throughout this season. And Alison Rudd's piece in the Sunday Times, she actually says that maybe he's not the answer for Liverpool long term. It's not as clear that Slot is the perfect personality to lead after a season of Slot stewardship. There is more than a hint of complacency. His steady intelligence sometimes feels like inflexibility. There is little sense of a Slot dynasty in the making. Are we at that point that maybe, and it feels crazy to ask given that they won the Premier League last season, is his future almost dependent on Champions League qualification this season?
Maybe it should be, but I think there's two strands to this. There's the analysis of how Liverpool have played this season and everything about Arne Slot and an absence of identity, but there's huge mitigation this year with Liverpool. I really do believe if any manager should be given time, certainly this summer and going into next season, it should be Arne Slot. He came in his first year, he won the title. He then had the tragedy and the trauma of Diego Jota, and we'll never know the impact that had on the dressing room. There was the churn in terms of the new players coming in, the misfortune of what's happened to Alexander Isak. I do really believe in all of this analysis and inspection over his future now. If any manager deserves a little bit of a free pass this year, it's Arne Slot. It doesn't mean we can't analyse what's gone on at Liverpool this year, and I do think a lot of it comes back to recruitment. And they spent £450 million in the summer, quite unprecedented on the back of what would appear to be, something which isn't broken. They won the league, and they won the league well. And I was talking to somebody in recruitment a couple of weeks ago, you look, and this is a theme across the league, teams who spent a lot last summer and teams who brought in a high churn of players, the vast percentage of them, they haven't impacted. You look at Newcastle, you look at Liverpool, and for all of the talk around Hugo Ekitike, we mentioned Erling Haaland there. I think Ekitike has only got 2 or 3 since Christmas himself. Has he had a good season? Has he had the sort of impact you would expect, or what Liverpool needed for defending the title? I don't think he has really. He's more Loic Remy than he is Thierry Henry. I think he's a good player, but I don't think he's necessarily a great player. You've got Florian Wirtz, who, yes, he's looked better of late, but half a season was gone by the time he really clicked into gear. So there is mitigation there, but they just haven't really this season carried themselves with the aura of champions. I think never was that more apparent in the game against Manchester City 5 or 6 weeks ago. Got the lead, but didn't really have that resilience and that character to see it out in the end. So it's been a really poor title defence. They've lacked identity. I know there's a lot of criticism online over Arne Slot, but I've been inside Anfield a couple of times this season. It feels as if the match-going fan is still with him, and that does speak to a lot of what I said there earlier. And I always say, take the temperature of where a manager is at inside a stadium, not on an online platform. I would like to see him given time, but undoubtedly it's been a disappointing season.
Miguel, Craig mentioned it there with regard to the recruitment, particularly at Liverpool, and the number of players that they brought in and released as well, and the amount that they spent. Is that Arne Slot's fault then?
No, I mean, I suppose we've discussed this in the show before. You can get into it with Chelsea and a lot of other clubs. I mean, we have this situation where managers are obviously talking about recruitment that they don't have that much of an input in, that they're kind of essentially given a squad. And like one of the reasons they hired Slot in the first place was to be a head coach who fits into a structure rather than being the figurehead responsible for so much like Jurgen Klopp. Look, I think we've said it before as well. There are questions in recruitment in just how much of the available budget was put into the forward line, a forward line that isn't working properly. I mean, one of the things that so stood out with the Galatasaray game was A, how slow they were, and B, one of the things I was stunned by was the amount of bad decisions they made going forward, either through the wrong option at the wrong moment or mishit passes that were suddenly going astray. Look, speaking to people at other clubs, they say one of the biggest differences with Liverpool is ultimately Salah's not what he was last season. And it's not just about Salah himself, it's also he doesn't have Alexander-Arnold beside him. That's like almost the kind of, like if you think about the centre of gravity of the team, that's a huge part of it that's just kind of dropped off. To go with all the other issues, as Craig has mentioned, at least the tragedy. And like there is a belief, some people at the club think that actually in time, this season would be seen to have been handled quite well by Slot because of everything that's gone on. But of course, they do have football targets right now that they're trying to meet. And at the moment, it doesn't look right in a purely football sense for so many reasons.
I do also think, picking up on what you said there, that in a couple of years we'll view this as actually he did all right there when players maybe talk about what this season has been like. Lewis Steele mentions in his piece in the Mail, if you'd said to a Liverpool fan when Jurgen Klopp announced he was going, that they'd have 2 years, one that was a middling, we'll hopefully get in the Champions League season and win the title, they'd have all signed up for that, been cock a hoop, we're going to win the title again. Fantastic.
Has it worked against Slot that it's gone the other way?
Oh, massively, yeah. Because you get the criticism as well that was there last year as well, that he's won it with Jurgen Klopp's team. And I don't think there's bits of that maybe that you could argue. And Salah was, as you mentioned, in incredible form last year. But Slot made things work as well. He reinvented Gravenberch and got him playing to an incredible level and crafted one of the best midfields in Europe last season. And I think the spending was for him. There's a bit of criticism in Ali Rudd's piece that he's not the sort of manager to go over and thump the cop and pump everyone up. He's much more reserved. But I think that's what made so many people last year respect him and like him, was that he wasn't coming in and trying to be what had gone before, trying to win over Liverpool fans with what would have been gimmicks if they weren't part of his character, if he wasn't putting on a sort of Jurgen Klopp 2.0 act. I think the sensible figures high up at Liverpool, and like Craig said, the sensible fans that go to Anfield every week and see what's happening, can get a sense of how the team are feeling, playing, will want to see him given the chance next year. Because if we've seen so many players that need a year to build up, it used to be that signings from overseas were given a year to feel their way into the Premier League. Now, obviously, with the money they're on, the wages they get, the money that the clubs pay for them, that's reduced a bit. But I think there is a case that Isak fit, Ekitike with a year, Wirtz with a year, they could still be a very special team next year. And I think it would be a bit short-sighted to suddenly jump at Xabi Alonso or anyone else at expense of Arne Slot.
And could still yet be a special end to this season, of course, still in the FA